majority of people in. So good evening, and thank you all for attending this webinar. And as I outlined in the various emails you've had, it's about groundskeeping, it's about environmental awareness, and we also have an umpire with us who's going to talk about pitches and the way that they behave and the way that they play from an umpiring perspective and what's important to them. So we've got, as part of the panel, myself, Chris Whitaker. I'm as you all well know, the program manager of the Young Leaders in Cricket program. But I'm also, my background is that I worked for the ECB for a number of years, and one of the areas I worked in was around sustainability, and I then chaired an organisation called the British Association for Sustainable Sport for a number of years, which is all sports, and it's about how we make sport sustainable and how basically we create a future for sport. So we'll talk a bit about sustainability, and one of the panel members is Marcus Pageant, who is the head groundsman at Valley End Cricket Club, and has delved into how he can manage his facility in a sustainable manner. Then we also have Steve Fiddler, who's the county pitch advisor for Surrey. So he's going around seeing, all the grounds from the little village clubs to the big Premier League clubs. So he's got vast experience and also worked at a couple of schools, I think it is, Steve, over the years. But I'll let them introduce themselves more fully. And then we have Pallavi Bhaskar, who's an umpire in Kent. And as I say, she's going to talk about how umpires have to work closely with groundsmen and women, because obviously the pitches that we play on, or the surfaces we play on, are massively important in terms of the outcomes from those. So what we'll do is I'll start off with Pallavi. She'll do the first bit, talking about her role and kind of life as an umpire. So over to you, Pallavi.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks. Hi all. Hi, Marcus. Hi, Steve. Good evening, everybody. So just to give a little bit about myself, some small introduction. I started my umpiring journey since 2021, and I was a cricketer before. So like the perspective changed from, being a player, moving on to an umpire, the way I see the game, the way the dynamics work, and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a nice opportunity. Thanks to Chris again for having me. And a massive shout out to you, young leaders. Like, you guys are the reason the future of the cricket, will definitely look very bright. So as Chris said, we're going to talk about pitches, grass, and sustainability today, and that's the foundation. Before going to anything else, just talking about umpiring, where do umpire come in? Where do I stand as an umpire? As an umpire, we deal with a lot of things, like a bit of science, bit of math, bit of managing people on the day, on the ground, lots of stuff. So, I mean, I've stood for matches from hyper competitive club games to school fixtures, uni games, and in everything, one thing is the common, that's the pitch. Right, pitch is my boss, I'd say. So in the upcoming sections this evening, there'll be a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, show you different ways that being an umpire, what it is, also kind of showing how this could help through life, throughout, it's a master class in life skills, and understanding our job can make you a much smarter cricketer, how we see the game through our lens, if you'd see that through yourself as a player. So that would kind of make you more smarter and efficient throughout the game. I would say the pitch, we umpires are like pitch whisperers. We stare at the pitch, more than anything before the start of the game. So that's one of the pre-match stuff that we do. Pre-match pitch inspection. You might have seen umpires go out there, looking at that piece of land and see what it is all about. And it's just not a casual glance, I say, right? It's most important piece, that is the due diligence. We usually look for two main things: the fitness for play and the playability. So fitness of play, is it safe? Is there a standing water, or is the surface breaking up dangerously? And if if those are the points that we'd want to consider and see how it is, and it's definitely not that where we will start a match or continue even, right? And then there's playability. So, like as umpires, we look for signs of wear and tear. Is the pitch dry, or is there a dry patch outside the leg stump? Is it cracking and things like that? So this is all about the pre-game forensics. So, like mainly, is it safe? Is it like a road or a minefield? And obviously the grounds crew is where we hear out everything from. They set the stage, and that gives us the perspective, like based on their work everything is set out in that dimension, in that lens. So reading of the pitch directly influences our decisions. As I said, I know the spin bowler is going to get a massive turn if it's like a dry pitch or a cracked turf at the ground. That means when the ball hits the pad, I have to factor in that the wicket turn into my LBW call. So mine are essentially calibrated by all this stuff. So like the tip that I would give for the players would be like pay attention to how umpire inspects the pitch. You could also go and have a look at the pitch well before the match starts. I know young girls and boys like out there, they just go about practicing, getting their line, getting their few knockoffs and stuff like that. But sometime if you could spend time, looking at the pitch, that would definitely help. And you know exactly what the biggest challenge of the day is going to be for the batsman or for the bowler. So yeah, the takeaway is that pitch is the umpire's partner in judging the game. Observe how umpire is inspecting the pitch, and you'll gain an insight into how you'll judge, how they'll judge the day's play. So yeah.
Great, thanks, Pallavi. That's a fantastic introduction, a good way to set us up to now talk to the people who work on the pitches. And so, Steve and Marcus, I'm interested to hear in terms of pitch preparation. What are the kind of key aspects, and maybe also talk about the amount of time that's required. I.e., if somebody says, "I want to have a game of cricket tomorrow," you're not going to be able to prepare a wicket in overnight, kind of thing. So yeah, understanding the sort of time it takes to prepare a wicket, but also what goes into it, and then how when the umpire turns up, you're able to feel confident that the pitch that's out there is one that's going to get played on.
Yeah, I think when people ask us what we do, I think they're expecting the answer, well, we just cut the grass, right? And it's
yes.
There's an awful lot more to it than that, as I'm sure most players will know, but there are some that tend to forget that. Yeah, I mean it's all the cutting, the brushing, the raking, rolling, watering, marking the pitches out, putting the covers on, taking them off, putting them back on again, and that's just before the game. So after the game, we've got the repairs to do. We're seeding, fertilising, dealing with weeds, pests, diseases, all that kind of thing that goes into it. And we don't finish at the end of the season. We've got all the end of season renovations to do, and then we're doing our aeration during the winter. And before you know it, you're back to pre-season and sitting on a roller for hours on end. So that's that all of those things go into it. And in terms of time, I would say 7 to 10 days before a game would be the start of a pitch. That's the initial cut, and then we work from there, and we're working around the weather all the time. So that's, as Pallavi said, the pitch is her boss. The weather is ours. Certainly, what comes out of the sky is so important to us.
Yeah. So Marcus, when you're looking to, and you're preparing wickets for lots of different, Valley End hosts a lot of different sort of cricket, from seniors cricket to junior cricket to disability cricket to obviously league cricket. So how do you kind of working that 7-10 days out across two squares as well? you're having to kind of decide what preparation is going to be needed for each one of those types of fixtures.
Yeah, and that gets pretty hectic. And we've actually got 3 squares. We've got 40 strips.
Sorry, 3. Yeah.
And last year we had about 320 games on the squares and another 20-30 softball games. So managing all that's pretty hectic. Receiving the requests, some of them are last minute, is quite a thing. And juggling between the pitches, which strip you're going to use, changing it because all that strip's really deteriorated quite badly, is quite a big thing. And then managing the team to get that done does take quite a lot of time, negotiating with the people that run the fixtures and the teams. I spend a fair bit of time communicating the needs of those people and trying to meet them. Obviously, as a groundsman, you've got your mind to the whole season. You've got to get to the end of the season, and you've got to keep good quality league pitches for those last games. For us this year, they were games we needed to win to stay up, so it was really quite important. So therefore, you're not always giving people what they think they want, because you've got to save some pitches for later. And then making decisions about, well, how much repair do we do on the pitch that's been used? How much time have we got? And I think you're changing the plan the whole time, really. Obviously, this year we've spent a huge amount of time watering the pitches, a lot more than we've done this summer. So really, every day we had a guy who probably spent 2.5 to 3 hours a day doing nothing but water the squares. He did that probably 3 days a week.
Okay.
Which is a lot more than normal. And then also you spend more time brushing up dust, which I particularly hate, and getting rid of it. And we had buckets and buckets of dust, which you then got to decide what to do with. We found an environmental way to deal with it, but you've got to get it off first. So yeah, it is a lot of work, and you have to be flexible, and you've got to keep your sense of humor.
Okay, so what's the Steve, what's the interaction like with players when it comes to, either you're getting the first team skipper coming to you saying, oh, this week we're playing, North London, and they've got a great spinner in their side, so could we prepare a wicket that's not going to give them... Yeah,
the captain that we've had the last couple of years at Hampton Hill, he hasn't particularly engaged. The one before that did. He very often would let me know what sort of team he had out, and if there was a pitch that we might leave a bit of grass on or take a bit more off, get a bit drier.
Yeah. So
watering earlier in the week rather than later. So, yeah,
okay.
We can have an effect like that if that's what they want.
Okay, and then if it was that you wanted to produce something that was a bit bouncier, what would you need?
I think it needs to be a bit drier, possibly a bit more rolling, just to get it as hard as we can. But a lot of that rolling takes place early in the season or before the season starts.
Yeah.
So that's what really makes a difference to the hardness of the pitch. But yeah, we can make small differences certainly during the week.
Yeah, I mean the pre-season work actually is something that would be interesting just to talk about as well, because that really dictates what the pitch is going to, or what the square is going to be like for the rest of the season. And I think it's often important to kind of stress that, if you don't get that right, or if the weather really plays against you, then you're kind of always playing catch up then in the season.
Yeah, we never quite know what the weather's going to bring in the spring. I know 2 years ago, Marcus couldn't get his roller out of the shed for a long time.
Yeah.
We were right up to the start of the season, even past the start of the season, before a lot of clubs did very much rolling. This year, I started fairly early, beginning of March, but within 2 weeks it was too dry to be having much effect. That drought started in the middle of March and went right through into September, really. So yeah, you are working with the elements all the time.
And that's when you look at that from an umpire's perspective, part of it, you get the start of the season, and you know that the ball's going to be keeping low.
Yeah.
So when it comes to LBW decisions, Yeah, generally they're pretty easy to give earlier in the season because you're almost certain they're going to go to hit the stumps.
Yeah,
But yeah, of course, when it gets later into the season, then things become different. I know you'll talk a bit more about that, but it is interesting the kind of relationship between what the groundspeople are having to do in the early bit of the season, whereas this year you had that kind of a very wet period, but then suddenly a very dry period, and that must have been really difficult to dealt with, as from a groundskeeping point of view, because you were suddenly having to change from one kind of methodology suddenly to something completely different. And in the meantime, obviously, games are still going ahead. And okay, we will talk a bit more about the sort of technical side of it in a while as well, because from a the standpoint of what the young leaders are. When we do the groundskeeping course, there's a bit of kind of practical stuff as well as the technical bit, without getting too boring in the technical side. But we might talk a bit more about the practical bit in the next section. But Pallavi, one of the topics that you spoke to me about was about people management and how important that is within the whole umpiring thing. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, of course. The other aspect is, obviously as an umpire, there are various sectors that, come into play, like various skills, right? One of them is people management, as I spoke to you earlier on, like when it comes to a game, handling the heat, being the calm leader. How do you all manage like two teams, 22 people on the ground? And that's one of the aspects. And you might think this is the fun stuff, right? Like when you're umpiring, managing people, but you're like a silent captain there, just watching out things. You're there to enforce laws, but more importantly, to protect the spirit of the game, spirit of cricket. For example, if a bowler is having a meltdown or a batter is arguing, as umpires, we just can't join the argument, but we have to have that ice cold voice of reason and, just pull it down and immediately continue to carry on the game. And let's say when a decision is questioned, we have to be firm but respectful, and also still keep in mind to keep the game rolling. The real world skills that you gain, it's not one day thing, right? Like as an umpire, you keep doing it, you keep gaining those experiences, and the real world skills that you gain, as part of this young leaders program, that connects perfectly to it. You become a natural peacemaker. As an umpire, you learn to step into a tough situation, listen quickly, make a decision, and get everyone moving again. Like you're not just up to that decision or that conversation. You just keep the game going on. And that's the top tier conflict resolution for life. And umpires learn to diffuse the tension and make unbiased decisions under pressure. And this skill is invaluable, like in any workplace or even social setting or even amongst friends. And that's a very unique and in a nice way to kind of mature yourself. It builds massive EQ. Like I believe in this, emotional intelligence, and I can see myself that how refined I've been growing through this, and how it actually teaches me. And this is all about active listening. You learn to read when a player is boiling over and how to talk them down with a single calm sentence rather than an argument. And yeah, for players, like my tip would be learning just to walk away after a tough decision. Like you know for sure it's an LBW, but like for various reasons the umpire might just not say anything. And this kind of thing that, okay, you carry on with the next ball, builds that mental toughness and resilience. Honestly, if you can accept a terrible decision on the pitch that day and focus on the next ball, you can handle any setback in life, let's say from a bad exam grade to a difficult boss. So these are all the life skills where you can apply from being an umpire. So yeah.
Yeah, from personal experience, having been triggered on many occasions, I can sympathise. No, but I think
as we all have.
Yeah, as we all have, yeah, quite. But I thought what you said about the taking those skills into other walks of life,
Yeah.
that is so true, and certainly about being able to resolve conflicts, and clearly at a smaller or bigger scale, depending on what the circumstances you find yourself in, is hugely important, and certainly in today's world, probably plays an even more important role than most skills or life skills that you can develop. And that's certainly one thing that we wanted to develop on the program, as part of what we offered. Okay, so just looking at that, Stephen, Marcus, and from your perspective, what outcomes from poor wickets can produce? Well, how would you see it? I mean, you're obviously human, and you're cricketers yourselves, and you know what. So how do you kind of deal with? And it might be that the wicket, you might have had a lack of time or whatever. Things didn't quite go right, so the wicket wasn't as perfect as you wanted it to be, and then you have to deal with all the kind of fallout with the players afterwards. Well, what's your sort of coping mechanism for that?
Yeah, so we had an occasion 3 years ago where we had a wicket which had very little grass on it, and I looked at it and thought, oh, it'll probably be okay, and it wasn't. We batted first. Our guys ran down the pitch or danced down the pitch to spinners, so they really rucked up the first 2 or 3 meters, and by the time the other team came to bat, it was pretty bumpy. And of course the other team didn't like it, so they made noises to the umpires about, this is unsafe, you should call the game off and award us the game. The umpires were great. They said, no, Valiant can only bowl slow bowlers, but the game will continue. And it did, and in the end it was a good game which Valiant won. But I was called down. I wasn't there, I was at home, but I was called down, and I lost quite a lot of sleep about it, because I'd made a call and it was the wrong call. We shouldn't have played on that wicket, and it could have been bad.
Yeah.
You do get a lot of comments. I mean, in truth, I'd like more feedback from players about the wickets than I really get. We get immediate feedback from the umpires, because of course they score us, and that's all aggregated. And last year I was very proud, because on the grounds and pitch markings we were second in Surrey at Valiant. So that for me gives me a very good kind of measure. So when Pallavi comes to Valiant, I shall make sure she's happy, and is there anything I can do for her? She's the most important thing. Our first 11 captain, most of their bowlers are slow bowlers, so he wants a bowler's pitch every week, and a slow bowler's pitch. And a slow bowler's pitch really is a pretty bad pitch. It's bumpy, it's dry, and I know that the umpire's going to mark me down, and it's not the right thing to do. So most weeks I disappoint him by not giving him a slow bowler's pitch. So you have to balance those things. You have to deal with it when you make a mistake and you get criticised. And
well, wasn't there a good Yorkshire coach who said, if you can't spin it on this surface, then you're not a spinner. Kind of things, regardless of whether you've got a dry wicket or not, you should be able to spin it. So Steve, and then in your role as county pitch advisor, you clearly have two different kind of relationships. I mean, you're working with people like Marcus and the other club grounds people, but then you're also a grounds person yourself, so
yep.
you've got different people that you're having to deal with. How do you kind of work with that?
Well, also as an umpire as well. I umpire at quite a good level in the Surrey Championship. I've certainly umpired a couple of games at Valiant. You might have been first, actually, Marcus, if I hadn't marked it down for spin in one of the last games that season. But yeah, I had a game last season, quite early on in the season, quite a high-level game, Division 2 in the Surrey Championship, and we decided to move pitches after about 20 minutes because it was dangerous, and pretty well every straight ball was hitting a batsman. And there were reasons for it. there'd been changes in the ground staff at this particular club, and they'd had all sorts of problems getting somebody else in, and everything was done too late. So there are repercussions then, and then my role then as a pitch advisor, I'll be going over to have a look and seeing what we could do to try and make improvements in the short term and medium term, just to make sure that doesn't happen again.
And that's, I mean, that's a crucial role, because clearly you've got, you know, years and years and years of experience. So you've seen, you know, different outcomes from different wickets in all kinds of circumstances, and now probably lived through floods, droughts, plague, pestilence, the lot. so
Yeah,
you know,
the floods and droughts seem to be getting more and more. And
yeah, well, we'll
season,
talk some more about that. Yeah.
This season was probably the hardest I can remember in 40 years, simply because we just didn't have enough rain, and we're trying to water, but then when, I know Marcus, I've got a fairly busy club that I look after, but we're not having 300 games, but on the one square we probably had 80 or 90, so it's almost every day you've got games and you're trying to get water on it, and it does become difficult.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're lucky. We have a good watering system. It gets plenty of water on at good pressure. A lot of clubs don't have that, and of course the teams that play on council pitches don't have it at all. And so certainly this year there were far more instances of really bad, dangerous pitches. I played on one myself one Saturday, and you know, we shouldn't really have been playing cricket. So I think, as climate changes, and this happens more often, it's critical that powers that be help clubs to get better watering systems, because that's the single most important thing I've learned, really.
Yeah.
Content.
Yeah, and that sort of is almost counterintuitive, isn't it? Because, well, clearly the differences in the country. You know, I mean, Southeast is one of the most water deprived areas, although you wouldn't think that today, but clearly and then when you're talking about climate resilience, it's not just about flood defences. It's also about, as you say, you know, providing the water and the rest. Just as a very classic example was Streatham and Marlborough a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, was it? Where that drought we had, where the outfield cracked up so badly they had to stop playing for a few weeks, and until they could, you know, fill it with tons of soil. And yeah, so yeah, I mean, the climate is having a big influence. We will talk a bit more about that. So then, just to move back to the umpiring side of things, and again, I'm interested. You raised this thing about match efficiency and about, you know, making sure that the game runs in a kind of efficient way, in as much as, you know, everything happens that's meant to happen. Do you want to expand a bit on that, Pallavi?
Sure, yeah, definitely. So as I spoke about people management, there's another aspect, which is match management in itself. So as an umpire, how to kind of make sure the show is run in the day, you know, within the given stipulated time, etc., etc. So, you know, beyond the big calls, like what we make, umpires manage the rhythm of the game, I'd say. You know, we don't, you know, I'd often call that as an unseen work. In many matches, or pretty much most of the matches, you know, umpires are the chief timekeepers, ensuring the overs are bowled in the required time, manage the breaks, and deal with any constant minor delays. Like, for example, a ball is lost, or like a batter needs a pad adjustment, or a fielder is running onto the field a little later, things like that. And, you know, why does this matter? Like, because a well-managed game is a better game. And when the umpire keeps the flow tight, the player maintains their concentration. The spectacle is great, right? The spectacle improves. And the players are in the rhythm. They enjoy the game. Everybody enjoys the game. So what's the real world skills you'd gain here in doing this continuously, or the aspects that you would, you know, look for is the self-discipline, right? Umpires force the pace, which instills great habits. As players, knowing you can't waste time on the field makes you incredibly efficient. Because I've seen school games and club games and, you know, the wide spectrum of games, and, you know, how to time keep, and what, you know, it comes, you know, second to nature as you keep focusing on being efficient and, carrying on quickly and becoming more efficient without wasting time. So these are the things, and, they are like essential for your college, job, you're running a business. So self-discipline is the key. And the other point is the power of small details. So I'd always say the devil is in the detail, right? If I miss a tiny no ball or allow the bowler to run on the pitch, I could ruin the match as an umpire. The need for absolute accuracy and being meticulous, like trains want to have a sharp attention to detail. Like you miss less in life when you train your eye to catch, the smallest errors. It comes naturally later to you. You become more attention to detail. So that's one point. The other aspect is the respecting the investment. So, for example, again, it comes down to the pitch management, right? Like when I stop a bowler from running down the middle, I'm protecting the hard work of the grounds person. Like you've heard from Stephen Marcus, like how hard it is, and so much of work goes in getting a pitch ready. You would just see the tip of the iceberg, but then there's lots underneath, which none of us would see. And this respecting the investment teaches everyone that you need to respect the rules, protect the resources, respecting boundaries, linking directly to sustainability, and obviously to good community volunteering. So these are all the aspects that you'd gain. And yeah, so good match management, ensures fairness in all aspects and prevents intentional slow play and improves efficiency throughout. So yeah, that's more about it.
So thanks. I love the way you're highlighting all the the life development skills that come out of this, because it is true, umpiring, and certainly so Steve's umpires at a pretty decent level. I've done all my qualifications. I've umpired on and off over the years, but playing's always called me. Had a stronger call for the moment. I'm just about to play my last season, and then I'll start umpiring after that. I have said that for the last 5 years, but this time I think it's true. But the match management and the rest is hugely important, and that, I must say, that's one of the things I struggle with in trying to keep, because it kind of gets repetitive all the time. You keep saying to keep moving, and don't change over 5-6 minutes just to change over every single over. Got to keep moving, and after a while you kind of start to run out of steam with it. But like you said, if you right from the start you are meticulous, then that's a way to make sure that you keep people fully concentrating on what they need to be doing. Yeah, so and again, you raised quite an interesting bit about the investment, respecting the investment. I like that phrase, because I think from Steve and Marcus's point of view, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the investment into a wicket is, and you might want to give some idea of what it costs, for example, to maintain a square over the course of a season. And again, that'll give us all an insight into the sort of, when we talk about clubs being financially sustainable, making the right provision for that. What sort of figures are we talking about?
Ooh, I mean, a contractor for a busy club square, I would have thought would be looking at close to £20,000 to look after it.
What size square would that be, Steve?
Well, something like I've got is 10 pitches, so 10 to 12 pitches, I'd say, is an average square.
Okay. And yeah, how many games would you? Sorry, well, how many games would you get off a square like that?
I think we had between 70 and 80 this year on grass, as well as a lot of pitches on artificial pitch that we've got at one end. I've got a practice square as well that we look after on grass. So yeah, it is used a lot. It's pretty well every day from May to the end of July.
Yeah, Steve, you might want to just take your microphone down a little bit, or up, or whatever. Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah. So that, and of course that's important, because those 70 or 80 games bring in revenue each single game in terms of match fees and income in the bar, and all the catering and the rest of it. So that's why having a good wicket is really important, because you want to get the games and you want them to last the length of time that they're supposed to, and clearly with the players' abilities allow. But yeah, the investment side of it is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, and looking at, I'm just about to spend £20,000 on a couple of items of equipment, a new roller and mower at Tampton Hill.
Yeah.
Looking at the ECB to give us some help with that with a loan, but yeah, it's hugely expensive ground equipment, materials on top of that.
Yeah. So Marcus, I presume at Valley End, I mean, we're talking quite a big investment to keep 3 squares going.
Yeah, I think our turnover is about £325,000 a year. That's all of our income. Our outgoings are usually about £325,000 a year. So if we can break even, pretty happy. Of that 325,000, I think about 80,000 is things related to the ground maintenance of the 3 squares.
So that's feed and loam and all the rest of it.
Some money to the groundsman, maintaining equipment, an awful lot of money on loam, fertilizer and seed, cost of the water, diesel we use quite a lot of, and then all sorts of other bits and pieces that we're spending money on. And obviously the reality is in most clubs, and certainly ours, the grounds team aren't paid, if you like, a proper wage. We're all paid some money, but not proper money. 2 of the 5 people are volunteers. So that kind of masks the true cost. But that's the only way clubs can survive, even clubs like us who, do make money by hosting other cricket, and we do our best to raise money in other ways, but it's still a struggle.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're making a really important point there about financial sustainability and how volunteering, and that's clearly what the young leaders in cricket programs are all about. It's about volunteering and that putting something back into the club that you play at. And that's why we call them community clubs, because that's they're not professional clubs that are maintained by benefactors or selling tickets to games or generating income that way. It's relies on volunteers to help run it, and being able to expand the sort of revenue opportunities, but those can only be delivered by volunteers. So you can have a great bar, but if you've got no one who's volunteering to help behind it, it's no point. So the volunteering side is really important, and groundskeeping. And I was interested when you said about you needed someone to water the pitch this season because of how dry it was, and that was a volunteer, I presume, someone that. Yeah, so and that would be something, a practical way that as a young leader you could get involved with helping out. It's and that can then lead on to kind of, and we'll talk a bit more about the kind of pathways into the different professions, umpiring and groundskeeping in a little while. But it's that kind of thing that could lead to understanding more about what groundskeeping involves, or grounds management. I think is actually a better phrase, because it's not just the square and the outfield, it's everything that sits around it as well. Yeah, so Steve, I know clearly again from your from the county pitch advisor side of things, and getting around to lots of different types of clubs, so through your maybe 1 or 2 team village side to a Valley End type operation, or a I'm just trying to think of Ealing or somewhere like that that's going. Sorry, that's Middlesex, not Surrey, but somewhere like that that's running a huge operation. How you see the kind of volunteers that make that things happen there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sports turf industry as a whole, not just cricket but in other sports, we're almost unique in that we rely on volunteers so much. Some clubs it is totally run by volunteers, and there's a team of 7 or 8 of them, and you've got to admire these guys. But and they are mainly guys, and I think we'll come on to diversity at some point, because
we will.
most of them are people like me. They're older, and they're of the ethnicity that I am, and we really do need, and it's one of the biggest challenges I think we've got, is to increase that diversity. And I think it's starting to happen a bit at the top level.
Yeah.
There's some very good female groundsmen around, and the World Cup final pitch for the rugby at Twickenham was a complete female team that did that.
Yeah.
So, so we are working on it, but certainly ethnicity and getting young people in is the biggest challenge that we face as an industry.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about, you know, the because I think clearly there's also a lot of negativity that sits around it, and but there's far more positive elements to it. And you know, I'm anyone who's kind of fully immersed in cricket is going to be involved in all the different aspects, and you know, clearly grounds preparation is one of them, umpiring is another one, coaching is another one, you know, and I've been lucky enough to be involved on all those different fronts, as well as have a day job and a living. But it's, you know, it's what really makes, as you say, cricket and other team sports, but cricket in particular, because of, you know, the amount of effort that goes into having to prepare these brilliant surfaces that help us, you know, develop our games, and then clearly, you know, the time you spend together. It's a whole different kind of sport. So, which then kind of brings me neatly to looking, and let's talk from a player's perspective now. So, again, if you want to, Pallavi, start and talk so through the eyes of an umpire, kind of thinking, and you've played as well, so you played a decent standard yourself. In fact, you might just want to give a little bit of background about yourself, and the fact that you're the daughter of an umpire. So that's a good place to start.
Yeah. So I've played county level cricket myself in India. So I used to play there for under 19s. Moved to UK in 2010, and obviously didn't play cricket for some time, but then started again in 2018. And my dad is was a BCCI umpire and a scorer. He's retired now, and that's where the interest came in. And I mean, that's where I wanted to kind of start into umpiring. I had an ACL injury on my knee, and then I still wanted to be in cricket, but couldn't play. Like I was a keeper batter. Couldn't do a lot of keeping. And then, you know, when I was talking to my dad, you know, discussing all this, talking about games on the telly and stuff, said if you want to be still in cricket, I think umpiring or scoring is a good bet, and you could learn a lot. So he did not force on me, but he kind of opened the avenue for me, and I tried, you know, looking at initially it was like softball games, volunteering for the clubs, standing out there, understanding from the umpire's point of view. And then that is where the switch happened. Like I started to see the game in both the ways. I used to play and also umpire at different games. So I kind of gotten a bit more smarter because I was thinking like an umpire when I was playing as well. So, you know, that is probably what, you know, I want to kind of switch the focus back onto the cricketers and probably help you out or tell you that how you could use your knowledge of umpire's role to be more a successful player. Obviously, you know the other techniques, you watch games, you get coached by good people, you know, improving your batting technique or bowling technique, fielding, keeping, everything, right? But then there's another element which you could use for your benefit, that is using umpire's perspective to your advantage. You heard how players master the surfaces during recent professional series, right? The secret is that they're just not playing the ball. You know, they're just not playing the ball, you know, things like that. So they're basically playing the conditions, the laws. So what I'd recommend is be observant, read the umpire. Like, you know, I pretty much understand, like when you go out for a game, if you know an umpire already, you know what type of person individual is, and you know, you have some idea of how strict they are, like how lenient they are, or like how some umpires are more caring, more chatty, and you know, make you feel at ease, things like that, right? So read the umpire, read the pitch, and notice where the umpire is looking, for a front foot no ball, right? Notice how an established umpire, the other end, reacts to a delivery on a difficult pitch. So it's a combination. Like, you need to keep these parameters in mind and be observant. It's also a mind game. It's just not your batting bowling strategy, but also like applying other strategies like this. If you see an umpire giving a wider margin for no balls on a slippery day, note it. Like, if they're talking to a spinner about pitching outside leg, use that insight. Like, you can be so observant and grasp those details, use them, and you'll definitely be better at it, better at your game. When you're appeal like a pro. Like, ask the question clearly, and make sure your question is very legitimate. Then immediately forget about it, whatever the decision is. You walk away, get ready for the next ball, as I mentioned earlier on. Like, bring your focus back. You signal confidence. So as an umpire, when I see such players, I immediately get that kind of feel of confidence and maturity and mental toughness. And as I said, umpires respect that, and your teammates will feel positive about this. Like, it's the positive energy that you radiate. Like, you want to keep the spirit of the game. You're playing in the spirit of cricket. You're going up and about and wanting to enjoy the game. So yeah, that is more importantly it. Just an example on the Ashes Challenge, which is coming up. We know, like, Perth is fast, Brisbane bouncy, Sydney can spin a lot. This means how an umpire must prepare to judge the pace, bounce, and turn. Completely different stuff, right? So for players, like, England's challenge won't just be the players, like whom they're playing against and what type of ball it is, but it's how they adapt to this consistency of umpiring decisions and also reading the pitch across these different conditions. So be observant, and yeah.
So is one of your biggest challenges umpiring on a wicket that's breaking up and cracked? Because then you're having to try and judge the when the ball does turn, exactly how much it's going to turn, and whether I know with at the highest level, of course, you've got DRS, and so you kind of, and that's changed the complete culture of the way that umpires do it, because you get umpires who take a chance and give the decision because they know that the DRS will do it, and then others who are really cautious and don't like to be seen as making a mistake, so they're more cautious about it. But as a player, I'm sure the players know which ones are like that or aren't, so, and decide whether to appeal or not. So the cracked pitches clearly bring different, which sort of brings me on to then talking about this season that's just gone by, and I'd be interested to hear all of your opinions about so the India series where you had such changes in the pitches. You had the Old Trafford, which compared to Edgbaston was a completely different wicket. The Oval, and Headingley. So why do you think those wickets were so different? Was that the weather, or was it just unfortunate kind of coincidence of different things that happened? Well, let's start with you, Steve. What did you make of it?
It's difficult to come up with one reason why anything would be different, but some of them are different soils. From as you go up and down the country, even the county grounds, they're not all using the same stuff, and that makes a big difference. Different amounts of grass. I know Lee at the Oval leaves quite a lot of grass on. Others will take it down a bit shorter. But yeah, I think climate is as important as anything. As you go up and down the country, there's a lot more rain in the northwest than there is in the southeast. And as the summer went on, and it became more and more difficult to get pitches up. So I think that's probably the main difference was the way the weather was, and the longer that drought went on, the harder it was to get pitches out.
So, Marcus, how did you think the players coped with it? Because that's always fascinating to me, that they're maybe players' technique gets exposed if the wicket isn't kind of a perfect lovely road that they can bat on. We remember players who were known as flat track bullies because they scored lots of runs when the pitches were flat, but then couldn't cope when it came to playing outside of England. So, what was your impression?
Well, first, I mean, it's one of the greatest series we've ever had in this country. I absolutely loved it. I think it was clear, wasn't it, that the players with the best technique did best. So Shubman Gill had a fantastic summer,
Yeah,
and he's got a wonderful technique, and
indeed.
he watches the ball. Joe Root obviously as well. So I think it showed there's a premium on that. Why the pitches were so different, I don't know. I certainly watched them a lot and found myself watching the pitch as much as the cricket and the square and what conditions the square in and how do they get it like that. But I think, yeah, as Steve said, really, it's all coming to terms with the weather, the variety of it, that we're all having to learn to deal with that. And maybe the very best groundsmen struggled a bit with that as well. But at the end of the day, it was a fantastic series, and the difference in the pitches certainly didn't harm it.
No, that's a good point. It could have added a lot of extra jeopardy and more, as you said, tested the best players out, and they obviously rose to the surface. So from an umpiring side of things, Pallavi, how did you think the umpires performed?
Oh yeah, I mean, I just saw a couple of games. I didn't see full, but yeah, they were, as I said, as an umpire, I'm now watching the game like how an umpire does, and their body language and things like that. Sometimes, yeah, it's like, oh, that did not quite go well as I thought. Probably I wouldn't have done that. But then there are examples where I would take back, and it's a learning for me. I note down certain points and things like that. So yeah, it's both ways. Sometimes you're like, and then I ring up my dad or like my mentor, like Stuart, and other people, Chris Saunders and everybody, and talk about the game and things like that. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting
Yeah,
how currently with DRS again, it's like it's you got less in your hands and more on the systems and automated stuff around. So yeah.
yeah. Having grown up without it, it's kind of I still have ambivalent feelings, but clearly you do want to get to the right decision. So
Yeah.
I suppose ultimately that's what it provides. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about the pathways into your different professions. So I'll start with Marcus because you obviously had a career in engineering before you decided to go into grounds management. Well, how did you, what kind of motivated you to do that, and then how did you do it?
Yeah. So I'd loved my career as a civil engineer, but I'd got to the point in it where I was getting a bit bored. I'd solved all the problems and I wanted to give up. But I knew I didn't want to stop work. The thought of sitting at home just frightened me to death. So I was very fortunate that the groundsman at Valley End was wanting to pack in. He was 70 years old. And someone said to me, well, why don't you do it? And I said, oh, that's a great idea. And I think my interview, there were two questions. One was, do you have any experience whatsoever in groundkeeping? No, I don't. The other was, will you be cheap? Yes, I will be cheap. Great, you've got the job. And that was it, And then, of course, it dawned on me what a massive thing I'd taken on and the expectation. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to make a mess of this. But people have been very kind to me, and I've been fortunate, and it's gone all right for 4 years. So it's probably the best way in, to be honest. You make your money doing something else, and then you want to enjoy being out in the green and the outdoors. And I love it. It's wonderful, a massive privilege to be with the wildlife and the trees. And today, looking at the colours and looking back at the pitch we'd cut was wonderful. So it's kind of the best way to do it. As we've said, community clubs can't afford to pay proper money. So we all survive really on people like me who put their hand up and have a go. And, you know, Steve's club fortunate to have him, who's a career groundsman. Very few clubs do. And it's struggled to get by. So I'd struggle to recommend it as a career, because you never go.
Well, unless of course you're going into the professional side, which is
if you
very
get
different.
to be
Yeah.
the groundsman or woman at
Yeah.
and you're gonna be doing okay, no question. One thing we have done that might be interesting is a lot of you guys out there, you're asked to do some work experience, and this year one of the Valley End girls asked if she could join us for a week for her work experience, and that was great. She was wonderful, and she enjoyed it very much. So often if you go work experience in office, you're just sat on a laptop and told to do some internet research, and it's pretty dire. So
Yeah.
I'd say ask your cricket club if you can do your work experience with them. You'll enjoy
That's a
it.
great idea. Yeah, that really is a good. I like that. I'm conscious that we're sort of getting to the end of the hour, but I'd like to just carry on a bit. But if you do have to leave, then I absolutely understand. So Steve, from the kind of mapped out routes into being able to train as a grounds person, what is there?
Yeah, I think certainly, as Marcus said, work experience and as a volunteer is a great entry point to see if it's what you want to do, and you can do that before you leave education. After that, the employers, like the private schools, are very good. They're taking people on. There's now a degree level apprenticeship, which in sports turf, and that's been run by the Grounds Management Association, among others. The professional clubs, the stadiums, the training centres are all excellent employers. Local authorities used to be the way in for an awful lot, but now they're contracted out, and there are some good contractors out there, and there's some quite poor ones, frankly.
Yeah,
some of the worst pitches I saw this year were at local authority level, but yeah, some of them are very good. I know I did some work down at Guildford on some workshops down there, and they were excellent, the guys down there. So yeah, that varies greatly, but there are ways in. I had a quick look at jobs this afternoon on one or two of the jobs boards that are out there on the internet. The Oval looking for somebody, Cambridge University, Watford Football Club, and 4 or 5 private schools all looking for ground staff at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that the fact now that there are degree, so you can do sort of part academic, part vocational. There are lots of massively improved, if you like, training in terms of educational side of things. There are far more courses that you can do, and they come with a lot of accreditation. And of course, the game has exploded. We now have 6 formats of the game, which is, that's unique to us. Our sport is the only one that plays different formats with the same number of players. Okay, there is no other sport that does it, that has shortened or lengthened. So, and with all those formats, of course, the 100, the test matches, the county championship, the blast, the 40. The 40 over game, they all require people to prepare pitches, and then the more games that are played, clearly the more people are needed to do that. So there are far more opportunities than there ever were. And of course, other professional sport, you think football, it's every Premier League club and most first division teams have their own training grounds, which that was never a thing before. So they're all need people to work there. So it's there's a lot more opportunities. Okay, so finally, I just want to and then of course, in terms of umpiring, there are, again, county boards offer lots of entry routes into umpiring, and then further training for you to go on. So that's presumably how you did it, Pallavi.
Yeah. There's development pathways that's set up, and it's kind of going one step at a time, knowing your laws and, reading that through, applying it while you umpire your club games or community games as a volunteer, and learning through that. So there's a nice pathway out there to kind of reach up to, like, up to county levels, and then obviously international level and things like that. So.
And similarly, because there's so many more formats and that need umpires, there's a much bigger cohort of umpires than there ever were. So, and lots of professional opportunities to go, travel the world essentially, and have a lifestyle that's could be pretty exhausting. Looking at some of those umpires. Okay, so the final thing I want to touch on is the around the sort of climate resilience and environmental awareness side of things, and it's a broad topic, but as I said, my background's in that, and when I worked at the ECB, we were one of the early adopters in the part of the ECB that I worked in, which was working with recreational clubs, looking at how they could become more sustainable, and that was not just in the financial side or in the other areas, but in how they could mitigate against climate change and what they could do to make the changes. So, Marcus, just from you and what you've done at Valley End, and I know there's been two phases to it, from when the ground was being developed and kind of coming up with early adoption of quite a few initiatives, to what you're doing now. Do you want to just talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I, as we said, I came into groundkeeping with an interest in the environment from my career as a civil engineer, and wanted to kind of have some impact on it as I came into it. What I can say to people is I'm on TikTok as Ungrumpy Groundsman. You've probably been looking at TikTok during this call anyway. So if you go on to TikTok, Ungrumpy Groundsman, you'll see some videos of our site, which is probably better than me talking. But the things we've done, we've got some, the periphery of our pitches gives us a bit of space to do things. So we let the grass grow on those where we'd been cutting it. And that's grown as a series of different plants. It's improved the biodiversity of the site very much. And I think there is more wildlife, certainly more bird life around now than there was even 4 years ago. We planted trees around the bund that is around our site, and put some wildflower seed down. We've kind of created a walkway because we wanted to get people out looking at the trees and the wildflowers. So doing that has been quite important. We put an outdoor classroom up on the top under trees, and encourage the coaches to take the youth players up there to kind of give them classroom type training. One thing I've been trying to do is composting, so mixing the grass we cut with the leaves that we pick up. One of our grounds particularly has a lot of trees around it. Trying to layer grass and leaves, it's quite a lot of work, and only happens because I'm interested in it. But it has produced some fantastic quality compost that we're now churning up to use to fertilise the outfield. We wouldn't use it on the square, but that allows us to reduce our use of synthetic fertilisers, which is kind of one of the bad things we do as grounds people, because we have to, using fertilisers. We've bought electric groundkeeping kit where we can, so we use a bit less diesel now. And I think what that's done is it has made the ground more beautiful, which has been a good way of engaging people, because they'll kind of comment on something looking beautiful. I'm a bit disappointed at how little engagement we've had from the club about the environmental impact, which was kind of the first driver, trying to reduce our carbon footprint, which I measured 5 years ago as 52 tonnes. But I think it helps as well. It does make us, as well as making us more environmentally sustainable, it can help make us more financially sustainable, because we can let the ground for other things. People come and have their wedding at Valley End. They probably weren't when it just looked like a cricket ground. So that's got those benefits. But And we've raised money for it. Hasn't cost the club any money. And I kind of enjoy it. It makes it more interesting, but it is difficult to do, no question.
Yeah, and given the audience we've got here, I just want to make a really important point. It's kind of if you like, you guys out there are the future. We're the 3 male participants here are, on the older side of things. So it's really up to you guys at the sort of age that you are. You're the ones who can make a difference, and you can do that by going and talking to someone like Marcus and saying, what can I do to help? Okay, because that's he's got lots of ideas about like what he'd like to do, but he can't do it because he just won't have the time or the capacity. But you could. Okay, so that's where you can really provide that kind of inspiration and making a difference. And there's lots you can do at a cricket club. We're privileged as a sport to play in an open space, okay, that can contribute positively to the environment. A lot of sports don't have that privilege and that luxury. We play in big spaces than most sports, and we have the opportunity to improve our biodiversity, to use the assets that we've got to make a difference. So get involved with a conversation at your club. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to go and start shouting and being trying to be awkward about it. Just have a discussion and ask, what can I do that would make a difference? And like I said, you'll find people like Marcus there in plenty of clubs. The grounds people are the people who've got the most close connection to the environment. And if you can help them and you can come up with ideas to work with them, Sidcup Cricket Club, you talked about a walkthrough thing. They created something like that, and that's an inner city club. They were able to use the space that they've gotten in a positive way. So please, if you can get involved, you can make the difference. Okay, as I said, you're the future to help make those differences. Steve, you mentioned about the change in equipment and the kind of more modern sort of equipment that's available now.
Yeah, as Marcus said, the switch to battery-operated equipment from petrol and diesel engines, that's made a huge difference. The mower I'm just about to order is battery-operated. That's for the pitches, so that's going to make a difference. Some of the other moves on the equipment front, on the robotic front, which is not particularly environmentally friendly, but it's certainly saving us a lot of time. Yeah, which again makes the club more sustainable if they don't need as many volunteers, because you've got a mower that goes and does it itself more or less. So spraying has been used in farming for a long time now, and makes everything a lot more accurate, and in the end uses less materials. So that's a good thing. And I think that will come into groundsmanship as contractors get more involved with that. So
okay, so there is positive moves to changing things to
definitely
beneficial and towards okay. Well, and as I said, keep that in mind. It also requires funding, so that's the other bit of the program where we try and give you those fundraising skills to work with your club where they can switch from fossil fuel powered machinery to electric type machinery, but you don't want to suddenly have to be reinvesting thousands into new equipment. You're going to need the funding to do that. So okay, so in funding, just to wrap it up, from your perspective as an umpire who gets outdoors a lot and sees a lot of, do you see climate change impacting on what you're doing as an umpire?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think year on year, we see like even it's spring, there's a lot of rains and stuff, and you see the cricket in peak summers, and it's really like a tough job standing from like let's say 12 o'clock in the afternoon until late in the evening. So yeah, I think the climate changes are kind of impacting everybody.
It's very real.
Yeah. So year on year, there's a lot of changes, and starts impacting the game and everywhere, everybody, even the grounds, as probably Stephen Marcus mentioned about it, like the pitch, the conditions of the pitch, and you put it like if the games are like just one after the consecutively, like one after the other, if there are no rains, you need to water them, and you need to keep that going. So yeah, rain is so much important, and obviously every single factor leads to this kind of stuff. So I think it is affecting everybody in every aspect. So I
Yeah,
think
we've
should
seen a
keep an eye,
professional level.
yeah.
And things like Hurricane Melissa that's just gone through Jamaica. It's going to absolutely destroy a lot of their facilities, and that's rebuilding, it's all that kind of thing. So anyway, I could go on for a long time about this, and we're not going to. You've all been very patient. Thank you very much. And I want to thank our panel, and for their input and what they've provided this evening. It's been really, from my perspective, I've learned a lot. Okay, because I like to hear experienced people talk about their jobs and their roles and what they do. And Steve, thank you very much for giving us your time and your experience.
You're welcome.
And if anyone wants to reach out to Marcus or Steve or Pallavi, just let me know. I'm very happy to put you in touch to have a discussion. And Marcus, yeah, thank you again for taking on at short notice and doing a great job again, talking about Valley End, which is a special club. And I've got to say, it's I was involved in the building of the pavilion and the kind of development of it, not only in as much as I provided some of the funding through the ECB, but it was just great seeing the amount of effort and work that went into doing it. And Pallavi, I wish you all the success with. I know you're keen to move up the ladder, and I know Stuart's got plans for you to start
Thank you.
umpiring at higher and higher levels. And again, but thanks for kind of very much emphasizing that relationship between officials and the preparation of pitches and surfaces, and what a difference they make to the development of players. So good night, everyone, and thank you all for attending. I really appreciate you. And I'm sorry we ran over a bit, but I hope you found it worthwhile. Again, if you want to find out anything more, I will be sending you some links to various topics that we've discussed this evening. So thanks all.